In national news, 5 weeks after a budget battle put the brakes on the federal government, the wheels are slowly beginning to turn again. It's a process that could be temporary if Congress and the White House can't agree on a border security plan before a new deadline in just under 3 weeks. Nicole Killian has the latest.
We have reached a deal to end the shutdown.
One day after President Trump signed a bill to end the longest shutdown in U.S. history,
the Smithsonian Museums will reopen to the public on Tuesday.
Shuttered museums and parks prepared to reopen as many federal workers breathed a collective sigh of relief.
I'm happy to go back to work.
From this D.C. pop-up kitchen to an air traffic control center in Georgia.
Very pleased that my co-workers and I are going to be getting a paycheck finally.
Excitement mixed with doubt, knowing the government will only be funded for the next 3 weeks.
Us as federal employees our livelihood should not be messed with as we move forward.
With a bipartisan committee of lawmakers now tasked to come up with a deal on border security, the president wrote on Twitter, 21 days goes very quickly. Negotiations with Democrats will start immediately. Will not be easy to make a deal. Both parties very dug in. The president also tweeted this video and continued to make his case for a border wall.
If we don't get a fair deal from Congress, the government will either shut down on February 15th again, or I will use the powers afforded to me to address this emergency.
With no wall funding in the current bill, Mr. Trump fired back at critics, claiming this was in no way a concession. A person familiar with the president's deliberations said the real pivot point came Thursday after GOP senators expressed their frustration to the vice president at a luncheon.
The motion is not agreed to.
And a pair of votes failed on the Senate floor, with the Democratic proposal garnering more support than the Republican one.
Hopefully now the president has learned his lesson.
Our unity is our power, and that is what maybe the president underestimated.
Before making a decision, a source tells CBS News the president was presented with a series of options, including reopening the government and declaring a national emergency, but he wanted to give it one last try to reach a deal. Nicole Killian, CBS News, the White House.
We are told that furloughed workers should start receiving missed paychecks by early next week. In other national news, a longtime associate of the president is maintaining his innocence tonight. Roger Stone insists he is not guilty of charges outlined in a federal indictment, and he's blasting an early morning FBI raid on his Florida home. Here's Jeff Begays.
Roger Stone walked out of his Fort Lauderdale home today and immediately dismissed speculation that he shared information about the WikiLeaks disclosures with then-candidate Trump in 2016. Well, who were you communicating with then if it wasn't the president?
I wasn't. Those two assertions regarding campaign official 1 and campaign official 2 are incorrect. They are false. Now, that doesn't mean that the special counsel can't induce somebody to say that, but they would be people who were easily impeachable because they either were seeking a reduction in their sentence or because they had an axe to grind against me. This will all come out at trial.
After emerging from the courthouse yesterday, the flamboyant political operative did a series of cable network interviews.
It's about silencing me.
Dismissing the charges against him.
No senior campaign official told me to find out anything about WikiLeaks.
And he sharply denounced the FBI for the arrest at his home.
I am 66 years old. I do not have a valid passport. I do not own a gun. They have all of my records. There was no reason to treat me like Pablo Escobar.
The former Trump campaign advisor is charged with 5 counts of lying, 1 count of obstruction, and 1 count of witness tampering. The court papers allege that he shared information directly with the Trump campaign about WikiLeaks' release of Democratic Party emails hacked by the Russians. The stolen data was released at key moments during the 2016 election in an attempt to damage Hillary Clinton's campaign. The indictment mentions multiple unnamed Trump campaign officials who were in contact with Stone about WikiLeaks. One person in particular directed a senior campaign official to talk to Stone about the releases.
Were you aware Roger Stone was updating your campaign on WikiLeaks?
President Trump did not answer questions about Stone on Friday, but Saturday he tweeted, If Roger Stone was indicted for lying to Congress, what about the lying done by Comey, Brennan, Clapper, and so many others? The president is referring to former top law enforcement and intelligence officials who launched the original Russia investigation in 2016. Nearly 2.5 years later, there have been more than 35 indictments or guilty pleas. Roger Stone says that he will plead not guilty as he prepares to leave his home here in South Florida to head north to Washington for his arraignment in federal court on Tuesday. Jeff Begays, CBS News.
Joined here now with meteorologist Connor Pregitzer, and staying in national news, the weather really is shaking things up across the board.
Yeah, we saw it this week. We were reminded that it was winter out there, but for the upcoming week, we're actually going to be on the edge looking at the majority of the winter weather. Here I've got a temperature forecast for this week. These contours, the pink and up to that white, is the really cold air. What we're forecasting here, as I run this forward just a little bit, into Wednesday afternoon, is what we call a polar outbreak. That's a really deep southward push of some very, very cold air. We see those whites around Grand Forks and Minneapolis, and those pinks pushing down all the way to St. Louis. Here's what the temperatures are shaking out to be in the middle of the week. Starting with the coldest, Grand Forks on Wednesday afternoon, a crisp -20. These are all without the wind chill, so those numbers could get quite a bit cooler. Minneapolis and Chicago both also below zero. A little further to the east and the south there, Omaha and Toronto, a little bit warmer, but still some very, very cold temperatures pushing there. Now, we don't have that type of cold temperatures coming our way, but we do have some wintry conditions of our own. I'll break those down coming up in just a little bit.
Thanks, Connor. And one of the biggest issues facing the state legislature, whether to extend Montana's Medicaid expansion program, will be the topic of MTN's Face the State this Sunday. Medicaid expansion is a $550 million a year program that's providing government-funded health coverage to about 95,000 low-income adults in Montana. On Sunday, MTN chief political reporter Mike Dennison will dissect the issue with two lead sponsors of competing bills that would continue Medicaid expansion, which is set to expire in June. Democratic State Representative Mary Cafaro of Helena is preparing a bill to extend the program in its current form. And Republican State Representative Ed Butry of Great Falls will carry a bill that extends the program that may add some restrictions such as work requirement or drug testing for recipients. The half-hour program airs Sunday morning on MTN stations across the state. Well, thanks for watching the 10 o'clock news here on Q2. After the break, we take you to the first LEGO robotics competition held by Montana State University. And later in sports, all 4 Billings College teams at home tonight, including a big one between Rocky and LC State's men.
You're watching MTN News with Zoe Zandora, Storm Tracker weather with Connor Pregitzer, and sports with Casey Conlon. This is the 10 o'clock news on Q2, Montana's news leader.